So in some ways, you're cannibalizing your existing business by pushing streaming, by pushing some of the other formats, which a lot of publicly traded companies that have a nice, cushy revenue stream, I mean, I read you have upwards of 95% of your people keep their subscription. You're one of the few web companies that's built a really lucrative subscription-based business. A lot of CEOs would be worried about sort of knowingly eviscerating that business. Now, you were saying before you kind of expected this when you went into it, so it obviously hasn't caught you by surprise. But how do you run a company in a quarter-by-quarter way, knowing that there's this massive change and knowing that you're kind of going up and blowing up sectors of your own customer base?
Well, I think you're right that we have an easier time because from the day we were born as a company, we knew that DVD was temporary. And it turned out to last actually much longer than we ever thought. So we were fortunate in that way, but we've always wanted to become Netflix. And so it wasn't a hard, romantic, emotional debate about everything we've got invested. You know, we did DVD as a tool to build a website and, movie choosing with incredible interface and breadth, recommendations, and then we're just replacing the delivery mechanism and keeping the business intact, and that's always been our plan. So I think we have a relatively easy case compared to most companies because we knew this was coming. We were waiting for it and waiting for it. It finally hit, and then we've been, completely focused on it.
Mm-hmm. So how do the economics work out the longer this shift happens? So my husband and I have been for years paying for 3 movies a month or whatever.
Thank you.
And and you still haven't called me, so it's kind of jerk. But now that we get Netflix streaming on our Xbox hooked up to the TV, my husband keeps nagging me, we got to go down to 1 movie a month. This guy never calls you back. He's a jerk. Why are we paying him so much when we don't need it? So, I mean, we're going to be paying you less money a month pretty soon. Everyone else is. I've read somewhere you still have to kind of pay for both movies because you own all the DVDs. You have to keep buying more DVDs. You have to also buy the streaming rights. You're still paying this big postage bill. So are there ways you're saving money so that drop in monthly income by cheapskates like us doesn't hurt you?
Yes. So we look at it with the DVD model. We've got these tremendous postal costs plus these tremendous costs in all of our hourly employees stuffing envelopes and inspecting the discs all the way through the system. And so when you go to streaming, almost all of those costs are gone. It's less than a nickel to deliver a movie over the internet compared to essentially $1 for round-trip postage and all of the handling that we have to do, the packaging, et cetera. So tremendous efficiency, from $1 to less than a nickel in terms of our delivery costs. And that allows us to offer lower prices and still be profitable. So our profitability isn't huge. It's about 11% operating margin, and it's grown. This year it might be about 12%, but it's been fairly steady over the last couple of years, despite all of those price cuts, in essence, which is people going from the 3 out to the 1 out. And eventually we're likely to offer a streaming-only program, and then the question will be even stronger.
What about internationalization of your business? I just spent about 40 weeks traveling in other countries for my book and was really frustrated I couldn't watch anything while I was traveling. The territorial rights are so extreme, whether it's your business, whether it's Apple, whoever it is. And it's interesting because, throughout the rest of the internet in Silicon Valley, we're seeing tremendous internationalization. Everyone wants to be in emerging markets. Indonesia is Facebook's 2nd largest market. Everyone else is flying all over the world. You guys are kind of hamstrung because you're dealing with this old legacy Hollywood business. So how does that get solved going forward? And are you guys getting closer to solving it as an industry?
You bet. There's sort of 2 phases. On the DVD side, the postal system in Indonesia for mailing DVDs is probably not that great. And so our view has been when we do international expansion, let's do it just streaming on a global basis. And then, as you mentioned, you have to license the rights, whereas Facebook or YouTube don't have to license those rights. So they're able to operate globally right away. And so what we're doing is launching Canada first. That was a few weeks ago.
And you insulted all the Canadians.
No, actually, I think it was the Americans I insulted. No, the Canadians were fine. Yeah.
I knew you insulted some huge country.
Yeah.
I know you alienated someone other than me.
And so what we've been doing is focused on the streaming in Canada, and it started off very strong. We're only a couple weeks into it, so it'll take a little while. But the main focus is, can we succeed in Canada? And then if we succeed in Canada, let's expand to some more countries and more countries. But it is like iTunes video or even music, where it's country by country licensing. But if you look in the long term, movie consumption and TV show consumption is a pretty global phenomena, just like communication is, like Skype. Skype's a pretty global phenomena. And, you might think, well, for a lot of companies, 50% of revenue will be domestic and 50% will be international. But in fact, with Skype, it's 80% of revenue is outside of the US and 20% is in the US. So think of that as the natural place to be for a global revenue. And this is a company that charges you, not even advertising based. So that's the natural place to be over the long term, for someone. And we'll see if we're lucky enough and hardworking enough for it to be us.
We talked about you just trouncing Walmart and Blockbuster. You have some formidable new rivals, though, the more you get into streaming, potentially Google, Apple. It's interesting, Google and Apple have done so many things well, but every iteration they do with video still seems to fall a little flat. Even the fanboys really have a lot of criticisms of it. I'm curious what you think about their offerings and them as competitors, and also why it's so hard.
Well, I would say that Google and Apple have done some really impressive work in Google TV and Apple TV, respectively. And Netflix is integrated as one of the services on both of those platforms. So at this point, we don't look at them as competitors at all. They're major partners that are selling devices around the world that are bringing the internet to the television. And they have very different approaches. That's what's kind of interesting about it. Apple's is focused on very simple. And their belief is you don't want to think too hard and you don't want the complexity of the web on the television. And Google's is very powerful. And it's amazing what you can do in searches and various things right on the television. And you've got a keyboard as a remote control, and it's a much more intensive approach. But what's exciting is just how much innovation is going on. So again, you got Google investing a lot in Google TV and Netflix in it. You got Apple at the other extreme doing very simple low-cost devices and Netflix in it. And so those companies we're super excited about working with. And in general, the transformation that's happening over the next 10 and 20 years is the internet will become your television service. The internet's going to drive, it already does your telephone. Many people today still have a landline. But the number of people who have a landline is decreasing, over time, especially, generationally. And what we're going to see is internet video over 30 years. The next 5 or 10 years, I don't think we'll see much cord cutting. But, over the long term, the interactivity provided by the internet is just phenomenal. And it won't only be, Apple and Google and Netflix. It'll also be cable companies that convert their plant to IP. And really the IP revolution is coming. And with that, you get tremendous flexibility in the user interface. So, we've all dealt with the basic user interface that cable and satellite have for a long time. And it's very much a closed system with a slow rate of innovation. And what the web does is bring a very wide range of rapid innovation. And if you go back and look at Netflix and Amazon and other firms 10 years ago, their user interface looks pitiful. And what you've seen is very rapid innovation. You're seeing that continuing. And over the next 5 or 10 years, web-based television will have phenomenal user interface. You'll walk in a room and it's going to say, "Hello, Sarah, you look a little sad today. Would you like this show?" Because it's going to do, the TV's going to do facial recognition. and it's going to be able to do mood detection, and it's going to be able to give you suggestions. And you know, all of this sensor web is coming together on this open platform of web and HTML5 technologies. And so the video experience in 10 years will be transformative. And if you look at 10-year marks, in 1987 was the movie Wall Street with Michael Douglas, and he had that big brick of a phone out on the beach. And you know, for those who saw it, it was amazing at the time. You're talking on the beach.
He's so
How do you do
rich.
that? Oh my God. You know, and you know, then you could get car phones for a while, and slowly the phones got better. And then 10 years later, by 97, you could get a Motorola StarTAC, and you could fold it up and kind of jam it in your pocket. And then 10 years after that was the iPhone. And so, you know, you can see these 10-year intervals. And so then you say, well, wow, you know, in 10 years, whatever the phone is that we're using will be so much better than an iPhone, like an iPhone was than a StarTAC, and a StarTAC than, you know, this brick of a Motorola, that, you know, it's awesome to think about what is that phone. And the same thing is starting to happen in TV as it goes to more of this open system competition on web-based. And so that's what gives me great excitement about, on a global basis, the impact that Netflix can make and other firms in really making it a web television world.